everybody. My name is Caitlin. I work at Square Books. Thank y'all for joining us tonight for our first Oxford Conference for the Book virtual 27th annual extravaganza. We're here today to talk about Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. She's joined in conversation with Kiese Laymon. We're so happy you're both here. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. We've got a couple other Oxford Conference for the Book events this week. Tomorrow is Wonderworks, which is a book by Angus Fletcher, and it's about the literary inventions that have kind of most impacted our world and culture. He'll be joined in conversation with the poet Maggie Smith. We're really excited to have them. And then on Thursday, Lee Durkee, the author of Last Taxi Driver, will be joined in conversation with Tin House publisher Craig Poplars. You can register for both of those if you go to squarebooks.com/event. But enough housekeeping. Just quick author bios and I'll go away, y'all get started. Angie Thomas is the author of the award-winning #1 New York Times bestselling The Hate You Give and On the Come Up, as well as Find Your Voice, a guided journal for writing your truth. A former teen rapper who holds a BFA in creative writing, Angie was born, raised, and still resides in Mississippi. All right, on to the host. Born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi, Kiese Laymon is a professor in English and creative writing at the University of Mississippi and is the author of the novel Long Division, which will be out again in June. Is that right? Okay. The memoir Heavy and the essay collection, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America. Okay, well, that's enough for me. I'll leave it to y'all. Thank y'all so much for joining us. If y'all have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A.
All right. I just want to thank Caitlin for, organizing this. Thanks Square Books. And I just want to let people know two things. One, if you have questions for Angie, anytime during this conversation, send them in. I'll try to weave them in organically. And two, I just want to let people know what kind of party we're going to be having today. I have not yet given Angie her flowers in public. So today is going to be quasi me trying to give her a garden. It's gonna be that kind of party. I want to talk to Angie about how much I love Angie, how much I love Angie's work. And you can participate in that party if you want to or not, but that's what kind of party I'm trying to bring it today. Angie, thank you so much, fam, for being you, for loving Jackson, for loving literature, for creating shit that like we wish we had when we were young people. Thank you for wanting to talk to me today.
Thank you for talking to me. Like I'm in awe of you, legend. So like I'm excited to do this.
Yo, I want to just go on and get in. I want to talk about Maverick Carter before we get into some other things. I definitely want to talk about Jackson. Maverick Carter. Can we talk about the name and whether the real quote unquote Maverick Carter has reached out to you about that name?
He kind of did.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'll get into that. But the name Maverick, when I wrote The Hate You Give, I first wrote it as a short story. And that was while I was at Belhaven. And there are 3 characters from that short story that made it into the final of The Hate You Give. And that is Star, Khalil, and Maverick. And Maverick was a character that his name, I knew it needed to have some power behind it. And I struggled with it for the longest. Like I think in like the original version, his name wasn't Maverick. I can't even remember what it was. It was something else. It may have been Malcolm, which is a powerful name. But I said, I want him to have something of his own. So when I decided to write The Hate You Give as a novel, and I was really thinking on this character's name, I ended up, for some reason, reading one of my favorite books as a kid, which is Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. That book changed the game for me because it was the first time I read a book about a Black girl in Mississippi. And there I was, a Black girl in Mississippi. So I was reading that book, and those characters in that family influenced the Carter family in so many different ways. And I remember specifically there was a line where the main character, Cassie, says that her mom is a disrupting maverick.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's exactly what Star's dad is. Right. He's a disrupting maverick. So why not name him Maverick? Wow. And the power behind that name and the meaning behind it, it just fits him in so many different ways. Now, as far as Maverick Carter, the real Maverick Carter, for those who don't know, that is one of LeBron James's best friends as well as his business partner. In fact, they're trending on Twitter right now because like their company Spring Hill is named one of the fastest growing companies in Hollywood or something like that. And so I love LeBron, but I didn't know about LeBron's folks like that.
I love it. I love
Like,
it.
I had no idea like about a Maverick Carter or anything. So about a year ago, and I was, y'all can't let all this get beyond this room, but about a year ago, I got my film agent reached out to me and she said, LeBron's company wants to talk to you about possibly working together in the future. I'm like, oh shoot, I do love Bron. I know Jackson folks still got beef with Bron. We gotta let that go. But I'm like, hey, this is Bron. I know what he's about. I'm definitely willing to talk to the company. So I get on a call with some of the other people that work at Spring Hill. And one of the first things they're asking me, they're like, yo, Bron and Maverick want to know, did you name Maverick Carter after that Maverick Carter? And I was like, part of me in my head, I'm thinking I should lie and say, yeah,
Yes.
But I was like, nah, I'm sorry, y'all. They were like, oh.
That's so funny.
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, but one of the things you do when on the come up, you do this in The Hate You Give, you definitely do this in Concrete Rose. And I think that this is something that, I think we see in lots of different Mississippi literature, this commitment to layering secondary characters, right? Yeah, you create these secondary characters who could have, and sometimes we want to have like their own novels or their own spinoffs. Is that intentional? Like, and if so, if it's not intentional, like how do you do it?
It wasn't initially intentional. For me, when I write characters, I try to take what I call the Harry Potter approach. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say J.K. Rowling is dope because she done did some trash stuff, but as a writer, she's pretty dope,
Mm-hmm.
And I loved Harry Potter as a kid growing up. And one thing now as a writer, I look back on is the fact that every single character in those books feels real, feels whole, feels like they're just taking a break from their own book and making a guest appearance in Harry's. And I think that's one reason people love that world so much is because everybody feels whole. Everybody can find somebody they can connect with. And when I'm writing my characters, even though I'm writing contemporary a lot of times, I still want everybody to feel real and feel whole and feel like they're just making a guest appearance from their own novel.
I love that.
Maverick was like, from the beginning, he was one of my favorites. And I wanted to know as much about him as possible, even if it didn't make it on the page, because I'm a firm believer that if you create rich, whole characters, so much of them will shine through the pages that you don't have to tell everything about them.
Right.
You can do it in such a way that people want to know everything about them.
And one of the things I love about your work, and Jason Reynolds, I see this in his work too, is, we're always talking about who's your audience, who's your audience, who's your audience. But what I love about what y'all do is you let your audience not dictate, but influence what you do, right? Because I wonder, I've heard you say this, there might not be a Concrete Rose had your audience not spoken back to the book. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. I had no plans of writing this book. Like when I finished The Hate You Give, I thought I was done with the Carter family. I thought I was done with Maverick and all of them. I thought that was it, Thank you, Mama. My mama bringing me mail. Thank you, Mama.
Perfect timing.
That was definitely a Mississippi moment. But but she made me lose my train of thought. But
now, secondary, yeah. Oh, we're talking about the audience. The audience sort of like encouraging you to write Maverick into
They so many of my readers love that character, and I wasn't expecting it because with young adult novels, you don't see the parents a lot, and then people don't really care about the parents a lot.
Right.
They usually have no part in the story because they'd be in the way.
Right.
And with Star's story, I couldn't just have her parents disappear. This girl goes through the most traumatic thing in her life. She needs that foundation. And so I wanted her parents to be there and active and involved, but I was not expecting everybody to love Maverick the way that they did, and Lisa too. But people wanted to know, I see in the book that he's this great dad and this wonderful a husband and business owner and part of the community, but also we know he has this past. How did he become that person? And getting those questions all of the time, I started to think about it myself. But then I also have to give credit to Russell Hornsby in the film, because on set of The Hate You Give, Russell would ask me questions about Maverick nobody else had.
Wow.
And I gotta admit, I had to come up with stuff on the spot because it was stuff I hadn't
Yeah.
thought about. But as I'm answering him, I'm like, this is pretty good. Let me write this down on my phone when he's not looking. So I'm taking notes when he's not looking. And I'm like, let me get back to this. And it felt like the story just started coming together on its own because of his questions and because of their questions. So thank you, readers, for loving Maverick the way that you did.
Ooh, and you know, one of the things that, okay, so when I read The Hate You Give, like Maverick felt Mississippi to me. Do you know? And I'm sure he probably felt Alabama to somebody else, Maryland to somebody, but for me, he felt so Mississippi. And I've just always wanted to talk to you about the importance of place in your writing, because, you know, I've gone all over the country. Whenever I say I'm from Mississippi, everybody's like, oh, Angie Thomas. You know, every time that people talk about your work, they talk about it as if it is placed where they're from, right? So you do this thing where you're able to write shit where people be like, oh yeah, she's writing my story here. I want to talk about that and juxtapose it with your commitment to an actual place in Jackson, Mississippi. So can we talk about the way you manipulate and wonderfully like create and craft place in your work, and compare that to like your decision to be in Jackson, Mississippi when you could be anywhere?
Well, thank you, first off. Second, it is funny when people tell me that, because I did purposely not mention cities or states in either of my books, because I wanted to say this could happen anywhere. But I'm so Mississippi that, you know, it oozes out, you know?
So much.
Yeah. But it's interesting to me. I think about this quote by William Faulkner, and I'm probably paraphrasing it, but he was like, if you want to understand America, you got to first understand Mississippi. And so everything that's here is everything that happens here, it happens everywhere else too. So much of, if you come to understand the way Mississippi operates, you can understand the way America operates. It's just that, you know, you want to talk about, you know, the differences between class and race and blah, blah, blah. You want to see how that operates in America, first look at it in Mississippi. So when people say that, though, that it reminds them of their home, that also tells me that so much of our experiences are alike. So many of our communities are more alike than they are different. Every city has a Garden Heights. Every state has one. You know, every neighborhood has that store that people go to or used to go to. You know, we know these people, we know these characters, we know these families. And again, it shows that we have more in common than we think we do. But it was important for me still to honor my southernness at times by having Maverick say stuff like finna and ain't, you know,
Yes,
away
man.
from that, you know. But as far as me and my commitment to Jackson, I love Jackson. I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be the writer if it weren't for Jackson. And I have to admit, I still struggle with, do I stay in Mississippi or do I leave? I'm talking about getting a place part-time in Atlanta, you know? And I don't know, maybe one day in the future, I'm like, I'm gone. But I think I always want to keep roots here because this is where Angie Thomas, the writer, was conceived.
Yes.
But knowing that there are so many kids in Jackson who they don't see people like me and you all the time doing what we do. And if they get the opportunity to see that up close in person, it shows them what's possible. You know, so if a kid sees me in Kroger, and this has happened before, if a kid sees me in Kroger and they're like, yo, you're the lady who wrote that book I like. Suddenly I'm more real. What I do is more real. What I do is more achievable to them. All of their dreams are seem achievable to them because here I am in the flesh, a personification of a dream coming true, to remind them that any dreams that they have are possible, are within reach. So it's kind of like Nelson Mandela said, he always let people touch him so that they could see he was real. And that's the main reason I stay here.
Oh, I feel that, yo. I got them chills right there. I got them chills. And, you know, and I think people might know, but for people who don't know, you know, your commitment to life, and I'm talking about particularly like the Black Southern life, is it, you know, we see it on the page, we see it in these conversations, but I think people, I don't know, I hope I'm not out of school to say this, but I don't know if people see a lot of the other work you do. I work in the summer at the McMullen Writers Program in Jackson. And, you help fund that writers program that is literally creating the next generation of Angie Thomases, but I'm interested in like, what did you experience in Jackson that made you be like, when I get on, there's no question that I'm going to put on and do for my state and my city and my people. It just seems part and parcel of who you are. But how did that become part of who Angie Thomas actually is?
My experience at Belhaven.
Okay.
When I went to Belhaven, I was in the creative writing program at Belhaven. Now, for context, Belhaven is about a 10-minute drive from my neighborhood, Georgetown and Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
So, once you cross Woodrow Wilson Bridge, you go from one world to a whole different world. Like it changes.
Right.
Once you get near the stadium, changes.
Yeah.
So in those 10 minutes, I went between those two different worlds. And my first day on campus at Belhaven in my first creative writing class, it was really a department meeting, and they had all the creative writing students there, no matter what year you were in. And it was supposed to be like a big meet and greet. And I was the only Black student there. And I was one of maybe only 3 or 4 from Jackson.
Mm.
And I'm talking about, you got at least 100 kids. So 100 students and only one Black student and only a few from Jackson, period. When Mississippi has such a rich writing history, what do you mean a creative writing program here in the capital city and this is all you have as far as representing this city? But it made me realize that, one, so often people who look like you and me don't know that these things are around and don't know that they're there for us and don't know this is stuff we can do.
Right.
I'm sure you get it all the time. People come up to you all the time. I got a story in me.
Always.
You hear it.
Always.
But they always follow up, but I don't know how I'll write it. I don't know how to write it.
That's what you're supposed to say. I'll write it for you.
Exactly. No, not happening.
No.
But I think what happened with me at Belhaven, seeing that I was the only one, reminded me that, it reminded me that people often don't know.
Yes.
And what you don't know, you don't do. But then it also told me that if I'm in this position to help people know, then I will. So I'm all about helping to put resources in the community so that next generation of Jackson or Mississippi writers can come forth. Between you, me, and Jasmine, like we're putting it on, but there's so many more. There's so many more storytellers, and people don't recognize how achievable it is. Like people act like, oh, you must have known somebody that knew somebody. Nah, I didn't. I got on Twitter, asked about, if a book like this was okay. An agent said, yeah, it would be. I'd like to read it. And that's what started it for me. It's way more doable than people think. So I'm determined to help people understand how doable it is.
I love that. Thank you for doing that, fam. I want to talk concretely about Concrete Rose for a second. One of the things that you do explicitly, I think you do this in all of your books, all three, but you do it explicitly here, is if you see you like taking the time to try to flesh out this kind of masculinity and kind of Black man who's been seen as a lot more rugged and harsh and hard than he is, right? So you give us instances where he cries and he emotes and he's vulnerable, and we see him trying to decide whether to do right or wrong. So I see you doubling down on trying to show like that Black boys are so much more than this culture and this world and this society thinks. Yeah. I'm interested in how and why you decided to do that. I think you do it over and over again. And if you see it reciprocated by Black man writers.
Well, I would say to the last one, I do.
Good.
I think y'all are doing a great job.
Okay, good.
I couldn't have written.
We tried, child. I was like, please tell me we're doing all right.
Yes, y'all are. I could not have written Concrete Rose if it weren't for you, if it weren't for Jason, if it weren't for Kwame Alexander, because I read your works. Yeah. And I immersed myself in books by Black men so that I wouldn't jump into this thinking I knew it all. I think the best thing a writer can ever do is be humble. Be humble enough to be wrong, be humble enough to not know it all, be willing to say, all right, let me fix this, let me get this right. Be humble enough to listen to the feedback. So I think y'all are doing a great job. I couldn't have written it without you, but with Maverick, especially this character, so many people act like he's a unicorn.
Right.
And that bothers me because I know so many Mavericks. I know Black men who are wonderful, actively involved fathers. That whole idea that they aren't is a stereotype. Statistics show Black fathers are more involved in their kids' lives than any other demographic.
Yeah.
I know the Mavericks who once did stuff they weren't supposed to be doing and have turned their lives around, who are now entrepreneurs in some way, or who are doing things the legal way to make sure their family's okay. I know them. I know the real Mavericks who care about their communities and their neighborhoods. I know them. So my goal with characters like Maverick or with Black men and Black boys is to help normalize them even more, help humanize them even more. We see it every time a new name becomes a hashtag, another instance of a Black man being dehumanized. They're seen as a threat in that moment, as a thing that goes bump in the night at that moment.
Right.
But what we specifically as creatives, I think, are tasked with doing is bringing that humanity, reminding people that humanity, showing that humanity. Because I had to think about it before I started writing this book. Well, when I was writing it, actually, I talked to like Black men and I was like, do I show him cry? Because I know so often y'all are told, don't cry, don't cry. They were like, give him that permission because nobody does. We don't get that permission a lot.
Right.
And I had to think about it. Now, if I'm wrong, correct me on this, but I had to think about it. I cannot think of a lot of movies or TV shows where we see Black men characters cry. Like, can you, like, if I'm forgetting some, tell me, but I can't think of a whole lot. I know there was a scene in Boys in the Hood.
That's the one everybody talks about. That's the one.
And it's like,
about the one where you talking about I'm talking about where Trey started punching the.
Yeah. Like, okay, but beyond that, what have we seen? And that's such a human emotion that you're like, wow, why haven't we seen more of that? So, yeah, you gotta think.
Now you got me fucked up, fam. I'm like, you know what I did? I'm like, wait, let me go to Denzel. I know Denzel done cried somewhere.
I can't think of it.
I think Denzel shed a tear when he met Elijah Muhammad in the movie. A small one. But you're right, fam, and that is absolutely gross. That's gross right there. Yeah.
I just really messed you up. I can tell.
I'm like going through my shit. I'm like, nah. And some people like, that's how bad it is. I'm like, I think the father cries. And Latoya said, I think the father cries in the Black Lightning. But point taken, point made. You know what? But I'm interested in how we think about genre, given what you said, because in some way, right? Like there's this genre of like what a Black man and Black woman are supposed to be. And there's also a genre of like what Black books are supposed to be. When I first read The Hate You Give, nobody told me it was a quote unquote young adult book. I was just like, oh shit, I was just into the story. And then somebody told me how young the writer was. And I was like, damn, this motherfucker got an old soul, fam. Like, this is crazy. But I'm interested in talking about whether you see yourself, Angie, as the writer of books and novels and or the writer of young adult books and novels.
I say books and novels. Also, I see in the chat, we got people like, I think the dude in This Is Us cries. Yes, he does. He does. I know one of the writers on there. She makes sure he cries. Yes, he does have a full range. But here's the thing. Think about it, y'all. We sitting here trying to name off movies. Whereas I could name you a million movies where white people cry.
Shit, so many, child.
I could do that. So we got to, well, I do see myself though as a writer of just novels. I love young adult. Don't get me wrong. I love writing for young people. But like right now, I'm working on my fourth novel, which is what's called Middle Grade. The main character is 12, and it takes place partially here in Jackson. It's a fantasy. I got a fantasy reason to explain all these potholes, y'all. It's fun.
Oh my God!
I got them going to a juke joint on Ferris Street. All of that. So it's Black and it's Jackson. I'm excited about it.
When is it placed?
It's placed like around now. but I'm gonna
Okay.
call it like an alternate version of 2020,
Yeah.
2021,
Okay.
because I couldn't do the mask and everything. I had to get
Yeah.
away from it.
Right.
But yeah, I just try to see myself as a writer for young people. Like maybe one day I'll write adult. Maybe one day, I've been asked, maybe one day I will. But I like being a microphone for young people, not a voice, because they got their own voices, but I just like amplifying their stories and amplifying the things they're dealing with.
Yeah. I wonder if we can talk about Angie Thomas, the listener, because you like Pac, you know, when I was in school across North State Street from Belhaven at Bill Saps, Pac was our dude, right? I mean, he was becoming our dude. Like, actually, he wasn't our dude because we were still in the cube, but he was trying so hard. And then when I read, that's what I'm saying. One of the reasons that I really fell into you, because I was like, her understanding of not just Pac's lyrics, but the complicated philosophy of Pac seems so like my age group. But like, how did you listen as a young person in Jackson? Like, what were you doing listening to Pac? Like when we were listening to Pac, right? Like you must have been teens, like 10,
I
11,
was
12.
I was 8, about to turn
Okay.
9 when Tupac died. I
Wow.
still remember where I was when I saw the news. I still remember seeing that car shot up, and I wasn't into him as much then. Like the older kids would play Tupac. I have to put it into context. On my street, in my little cluster of Georgetown, I was the youngest kid amongst all the bigger kids. So like they would take me somewhere everywhere. They'd be on their big bikes and I'd be trying to follow along on my little bike. So I was always around older kids. I was always at the basketball court with the older kids or at the playground, all of that. So when they were listening to Master P and Tupac, I was catching on to it, because at my house it was gospel music.
Yes.
You know, the other day I went through some stuff and I found some old Karen Clark Sheard tapes my mama had. So like, that's what we were dealing with then. That's what we were listening to. That was what was in my house. But as I got older, I started seeking out hip hop on my own. I remember having like a little radio with the headphones, and I'd listen to 99 Jams and Hot 97 once it started up all the time. And I started, the internet did it too. I found out about Tupac.
There you go. Right.
I listened to Tupac. I read up on Tupac. I was reading all the theories about he coming back in 2003, all of that,
You think he's still coming back?
Nah.
Oh, okay.
Nah, I don't.
I'm one of them.
I got 2 reasons why. One, Pac would not have been quiet this long.
No, good point. He loved us too much. He loved us too much.
He loved us too much. There's too much stuff. Like he wouldn't have been quiet during Bush, and he, excuse my language, he damn sure wouldn't have been quiet these past 4 years.
Good point.
When we were yelling out Black Lives Matter, Pac was yelling it too.
No doubt.
So, yeah, that, and then like I don't think he would have hidden. I just don't. That's just me. But I really got into him, and I remember what really pulled me into Pac was that movie they had called Tupac Resurrection, where he told his own story. It's an Oscar-winning documentary. Y'all have to watch it because he tells his story from his own words. The way they put it together was beautifully done.
Yes.
And I remember watching that, and afterwards I was like, I got to learn more about this guy. Wow. And I really got into him once I was at Belhaven. Like they were giving me assignments, and I'm reading stuff on Pac, and I'm reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. I'm getting radicalized at Belhaven.
Radicalized at Belhaven.
Yeah, without them knowing it. It was my rebellious stage. I was like, I remember being so mad one day that I drove around Belhaven neighborhood playing Hit 'Em Up on high with the windows down. Like,
those y'all don't know about Hit 'Em Up, you might need to Google that.
Yes. So like but he opened my eyes to the power of storytelling, the power of words, the power of us. And the love he showed to Black people through his art is contagious.
Yes.
I was like, I want to do the same thing. And so I'm so appreciative to that brother. And I hope that my books honor him, specifically Concrete Rose. I hope it honors him in a way that, if he were alive, he'd be like, oh, this is dope. So
I was feeling so many Pac like isms in Concrete Rose, deeply. I want to make sure we get some of these questions in here so people.
I will tell you that in a lot of ways, Maverick is loosely based on Tupac.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah,
It's not even
yeah,
a reach, right?
yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
mean, you don't want to say that if somebody doesn't say it, but it just feels
Mhm.
so yeah, because I mean, Tupac was Tupac Amaru Shakur. Like, he was a
Mhm.
complicated dude.
Exactly.
Oh,
He
have you
loved
seen hip hop?
ballet.
Yes, have you seen that hip hop unfiltered?
No.
Okay, you should check that out. They got an interview with Haitian Jack on there. That
Oh.
might make you go through some changes if it got to me.
Oh.
But yeah, so you know what I love about what you just said? It's like, because you care so much about young adult readers, it's so interesting how people want to be like, oh, that means that's a young adult artist, right? Like a young adult writer. But I think those of us who are adults, like, we long for literature that can satisfy the adult part of our mind and the young adult part of our memory. And I feel like that's what your work does. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm never sure like about these designations of young adult or middle grade or old, because it just makes me feel like I've been submerged in experience, much less young adult experience. All right. I want to make sure we get some of these questions in so we don't have to wait till the end.
All right, and I'm gonna holler and let my mama know. Hey, mama, the ribs are here.
Let her know.
We ordered ribs delivery. This is so Mississippi.
Yeah, we did. I hope they got napkins for y'all up in there.
Yeah. She didn't feel like cooking the meat. She was like, "Order some ribs." So I got all the other stuff. Just order
Oh, I love it. We have somebody here who says, what recommendations do you have for those of us teachers and parents to help our kids read books that challenge their idea the way your books do? We love you and your writing and your characters, by the way. Oh, we love you so much, Angie Thomas. All right. So what recommendations do you have?
Thank you for that. Thank you to the teachers out there. Shout out to y'all, because y'all have had it. Y'all were having it rough without getting the compensation you deserve before COVID. And now during COVID, you're being asked to do so much and given so little in return. So I have to just send y'all love and thank you. Thank you. Now, as far as what I'd recommend, before I recommend any books, my biggest request of teachers is to just let your kids read. Whatever it is they want to read, let them read. I don't care if they want to read graphic novels. We want to create readers. We have to let them have a joy of reading. And that means letting them read whatever it is that brings them joy. We have to stop judging kids about what they read. Right. I once had like someone come at me on Twitter like, well, I don't think they should be reading graphic novels. They're so simple. I'm like, you probably just spent an hour scrolling on Twitter reading tweets with 240 characters, and you complaining because a kid wants to read a graphic novel. You don't have a leg to stand on. I'm sorry. So we can't do that. We have to meet them where they are, and they will come to the other stuff. They will, but let them get a love for reading first. Cultivate that first. I would definitely recommend some of my contemporaries like Nick Stone, Jason Reynolds, Kwame Alexander. Yeah. I would also recommend the OG, as I call her, Jacqueline Woodson. I love Jacqueline Woodson's work. I'd recommend Elizabeth Acevedo. I love Elizabeth. She does beautiful novels told in verse. Beautiful. And I would also recommend diversifying your bookshelves. Yes. Make sure that any kid who steps into your room, in your classroom, can find a book on the shelf that will reflect them in some kind of way. Right. Whether it's Black kids, Latinx kids, Asian, Native American, LGBTQIA, whatever it may be, make sure your books reflect our world. And if you don't have a very diverse class, that's even more reason to have diverse books. Yeah. White kids need to read about Black kids. Yeah. They need to read about Latino kids. They need to read about Native American and Asian kids. They need those windows just as much as those other kids need the mirrors. So there you go.
I feel that. I wanna make sure we get this in too. I don't lose it when I get into the other questions. Can we talk for a second, Angie, about why it's so important for the governor in the majority of our states, sadly, to stop working against Mississippi's interest? This is the most generous, kind Christian way I can say that question. I love to cuss. I can tell you might not want to hear that. So I'm not gonna cuss, but can you tell me why it might be in the best interest of those people to do what they just refuse to do? That's the kindest way I can ask that question.
The Mississippi has a tendency, a big chunk of Mississippians, not all Mississippians, let me say
Right.
that, and our government leadership has a tendency to fall in love with the old and not embrace the new.
Mhm.
And in doing that, Mississippi will continue to be behind. People don't want change. They want to stick to their old ways. It took them so long to let go of that flag,
Right.
because it was heritage, it was history.
Right.
What about the future?
Right.
What are we doing to give these young people here a future, and then a place that they want to actually stay in?
Mhm.
Because if you talk to my generation and you talk to the one coming up behind me, how many of them actually want to stay here? A lot of them have to stay, but
Right.
if they had a choice, would they? Are we creating a state where young people want to stay?
Right.
We have to ask ourselves.
Right.
So, but also, are we creating a place where people want to come?
That's
You
it.
know, like I, I I have the hardest time sometimes just getting other authors to want to come down here,
Right.
because they've heard so much. And the reason that the old reputation is still so powerful is because y'all are doing things to uphold it.
Period.
You're doing things to uphold it. Like, we have to elect our leaders better.
Yeah,
We
we
do.
do.
We have to elect our leaders better. But also, we have to be aware that we have an issue with voter suppression in this state. We have an issue with gerrymandering in this state. We have some things that we need to work through to make voting easier for people here, period.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of work to be done.
Right.
It's a lot of work, but I have hope because I see hope here.
Yes.
I see so much hope here. This past week, especially with the water issues in Jackson, have shown me a lot. It's shown me that, one, there are people in high positions that want Jackson to fail.
Right.
There are
Period.
people in high positions that want Jackson to fail. And
Right.
that would be a whole nother Zoom chat. So I won't go into the whys, but there are people in high positions that want Jackson to fail, and they want it to fail badly.
Yeah.
And they don't want to help the people in Jackson like they should.
Right.
But it's also shown me that there are people in Jackson that care so much that they will do whatever they got to do to make it work, to fix things. So I have hope in the midst of the frustration.
Right.
I have
And
hope.
one of the things that I just thought about was how, when I moved up to Oxford, when I came back to Mississippi, that's where my job was. I'd really never been up there until I moved up there. And when I first got there, it was so interesting that people in town would talk about Oxford as progressive, you know, and I was confused, when I looked around, that just confused me. And one of the things I think we have to remind ourselves about Jackson is it's not just like, the blackest city in Mississippi. It's also literally one of the most politically progressive cities in Mississippi. And I think if we don't think that folks in Jackson don't have water, partially because of that progressiveness, I just think we're fooling ourselves. I just think we need to think critically about who we grant progressiveness to. White folks aren't the only people in that state who can be progressive. And white folks who decide to live around white folks, I think, might be the least progressive folks in the country or the state. So Jackson, is a lot going on in Jackson, but you also see Jackson being a site of, I think, the most progressive group of people in our state. And it's just sad that group of people are the people right now who are struggling to get clean water. Let's get some more of these questions up in here.
That's a whole discussion right there.
I know we could go on, fam. I needed to get a little bit of that in here. Okay, so contrast. What's your favorite book and how has it influenced your work? I mean, you talked about Roll of Thunder. I don't know if that's your favorite book or not, though.
Yeah, it was. It's still,
Okay.
I'd still consider it like my favorite, mainly because it unlocked the door, as I like to say.
Yeah.
It showed me, oh snap, it's possible to write stories about Black people.
Yes.
Because we have such a rich literary history.
Yeah.
But when people would tell me, oh, such and such writer is from Mississippi, all of them were either old, white, or dead, and I was neither of those things.
Yes, man.
I'm like, what? But Mildred D. Taylor, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, it unlocked it for me. So I have to give props to that book all the time.
And it's so amazing what you said, or what I've heard you say about Jackson, and how, I mean, all places are like this, but in Jackson, we literally are walking on history. I remember when I realized Mega Evers was Mega Evers, because we go down Mega Evers all the time. And then you learn, and I'm like, oh shit, this meant a lot. And you say your mother heard the shots.
Yeah. If I called in here, she'd tell you all about it.
Story.
But I'm not gonna do that. But yeah, she was a little girl the night he was killed, and the house where she grew up, which was later the house where I grew up, is close enough that, yeah, she heard those gunshots that night. My grandfather got a call saying that the night riders were coming through. And so that meant the KKK was going to be riding through. And my mom said, like, they had to sit on the floor and they heard like a pickup truck coming through the street, hollering out where all the N words at. We want to have some fun.
Wow.
And maybe half an hour later, she heard those gunshots. So I know about history, and our history is still so within reach of us. You know, my mom,
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell her age, she's 65,
Wow.
you know, and she remembers that. And so many of our elders remember all of that stuff. That
Yes.
stuff is still a fresh memory for them.
Right.
And we're walking on so much history. Like, I found out only after this woman passed that the woman who used to do the sign-ins and stuff at the school when I went to vote, I've forgotten her name, but she was huge in the civil rights movement, and I didn't know. I just knew that when I went to go vote, she was the one that would sign people in.
Right.
You
Right.
know, that's because she
Right.
was doing that in her retirement days. So
Yeah.
we have so much history. It's living around us. It's still alive in Jackson.
It's still alive in Jackson. That should be the tagline. It's still
Yeah.
alive in Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this one? Amina asked a question that I think you got at, and if we don't want to go there, we can go to another one. But I think this is, Amina wants us to sit down for a second. How are you gonna move the white Mississippians that, as Kiese's mom says, you need 10% of to get things done to get on board? Even if you take care of voter suppression and gerrymandering, don't you still need to get a small percentage of them on board? And I guess the question is, do you have hope, and how do we do that? Yeah.
Well, I will say they do need to be on board, but it's not me or your job.
Right.
It's not the Black folks' jobs to get them on board. It's the other white people's job to get them on board. It's the progressive white people's job to get them on board. Because if I say anything, I'm just a Black woman with a complaint. I'm just a Black woman who has an issue with something. It's up to the white progressives to get them on board. I mean, y'all got to have those conversations, those uncomfortable conversations at the dinner table. You got to show people where their personal interest comes into play into these things. You got to show them that. And if I show it again, I'm just being an uppity Black woman trying to tell them something about themselves. I get shut down. That's where y'all come in. We can't do all of this. Black people can't fix racism. It shouldn't be ours to fix. It's going to take white people doing it. It's going to take y'all deciding that you're going to have these conversations. You're going to do this work. You're going to get involved. I don't even know if you're white saying that. I'm sorry. I don't.
No, she Black. She
Black. Okay. Well, for the white folks in the room, my bad, sis.
No.
But for the white folks in the room, it's up to them to do it.
I feel that.
Not on us. It's not on us. They got to do that. So that's the only way it's going to change. That is the only way it's going to change. If they have those uncomfortable conversations, they get involved, they do the work. That's when it's going to change. Because again, when it comes from us, we just complaining.
Yeah. And we know in our state, there's not much that gets done if people don't put their bodies in the way. I will just say as an addendum to that. And okay, this is a good one right here. I was in college the first time I saw you speak at Square Books for the Hate You Give. Now I'm a math teacher at North Panola Middle School. I love reading, so I created a book list to show my students what I'm reading because I believe that is so important. It has been a lovely way to connect with them during this virtual time. I got to have conversations with a few students who say that Hate You Give is their favorite book. Love you and your books. Oh, I thought that was a question. My bad. Professor Laymon, what? Angie Thomas, what is your favorite adult age novel? And then they asked me, what's my favorite YA novel other than your books? Right now, I'll just say Poet X. Poet X. I like Poet X, and I like Look Both Ways. Right now, I'm feeling both of those books. Jason Reynolds and Acevedo. What's her first name? Elizabeth.
Yeah. I love Heavy. Let me say that. I do love
sweet.
Heavy. Yes. And I love Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think everybody should read that. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give those as my 2 recommendations for the night.
How do you feel when people, I know you get this all the time, but the first part of that question, which was like, you fucking changed my pedagogy, you changed my kid's life. Like, do you still feel it, or how do you respond to just like praise?
It's wild to me.
It's wild, right?
It's so wild. Like, had you told me 15 years ago when I was in Georgetown trying to rap, that, hey, one day the first lady of the United States is going to say she just bought your book and is reading it, I would have been like, get out of here. You lying, you know? But it's amazing to me. I thank God for being in this position. He could have chosen anybody for this. For some reason, he chose me, called me, and I just hope that I hope that I please him.
Wow.
You know?
Yes.
I hope that I fulfill whatever it is he wants me to do with this. I'm thankful for it, though. I'm so thankful, and I take it seriously. I take everything that I do seriously as a writer, but I try not to take myself seriously.
I feel
I'm
that.
like, yo, after I get off here, I gotta go clean my room because that motherfucker is telling me this is a mess. You need to do something, you know. So yeah, I can't get too big of a head. I got somebody that punctures a hole in it every time.
I know that's right, yo. People be like, "Oh, yeah. I'll just say yes."
I got cousins who were like, "Hey, your movie was dope. I ain't read that book. That's too much. The movie was dope." Wow.
You know what? I feel like I made it. I mean, like, I feel like I made it last week because my cousin was like, "Hey, Keith, can you send me one of them hardbacks of Heavy?" This is the first time I've even said my book name. You know, nigga asked me for money all the time. I'm like, yeah, I got you, bro. What you need? Which one you want? Soft hard? He's like, on a hardback. You're like, man, I'm trying to talk to this shorty and she know you. I'm like, bruh, you gonna bring up Heavy because you trying to Mac? And like, hey, but that's what keeps, I mean, thankfully, I don't have nobody in my family who actually checks for me as a writer. You know, they just like, are you a good nephew, sis, brother, you know, whatever. Okay, this is a great question right here from Latoya Falk. Were you happy with the film adaptation of The Hate You Give? What advice would you give writers who are approached with film adaptation?
I was happy with it. I knew it was going to be different. I knew that going in. I prepared myself for it. I was shocked that they made it because, you know, stuff get options all the time and it doesn't get made. And what I mean by option is a film studio literally pays you with the option to make it, but it's an option. They don't have to. So I was shocked that they made it. I knew it was going to be different. I enjoyed it though. The director consulted me a whole lot. I wasn't a decision maker, but he consulted me on a lot of things or let me know what they were doing, blah, blah, blah. There was only like one thing I had to fight back on. And like I had to pick and choose my battles going in at first. But there was only one thing I fought back on, and that was the scene towards the end of the movie where Star throws the tear gas back at the cops. At first, the studio didn't want to do that. And I'm like, no, she has to. That actually happened in Ferguson.
Yeah.
You know, that's paying homage to that, but she has to. You have to give her that moment of power. And so they kept it in. But I was happy with how it turned out. This time
I'm
around,
glad you did that, fam. That's a different movie if she doesn't do that, you know?
No kidding. So but this time around with On the Come Up, I'm a producer. And like right after I get off of here with y'all, I gotta watch audition tapes for Bree and Malik. You know, I've been given stuff on the script and everything. We had to find a new director because our director that we did had to drop out because of a scheduling conflict. It happens. But like we're gonna be filming probably this summer. I'm excited. I get more say this time. But what I would say to authors about film rights is one, you know, if you got a good agent, they should be looking over all your paperwork and getting you the best deal possible. But two, also know that when you're signing over rights, you're literally signing over rights. So like, it's not yours. I hate to break it to you. It's not going to be yours. And it's rare for them to let you have any involvement in it. I was the exception, not the rule.
Right.
You know, I got friends who had movies made. They weren't even allowed on set.
Wow.
So you just make sure you get it with a team that will do it the way you want it done and will involve you to the degree that you want to be involved. But don't be afraid to sell the film rights. Don't be. Because the best commercial for a book is a movie.
I know that's right.
That's how you have to look at it. It's a commercial. It's a multi-million-dollar commercial.
And so in On the Come Up, are in the auditions, are they rhyming? Or do they have to rhyme?
Yes, they have to rap. They have to rap. So like we've had like out of how many have we looked at? About 60. There are 3 that I'm like really like, yeah, it's got to be one of these 3. They have to rap. It's like it's not up for discussion. And rapping is not nearly as easy as people think.
Right.
It's not. They got to have that swag. They got to have that genuine flow with it. And
Yeah.
we got some young ladies that are like killing it. So
They got it? They got it?
They
Okay.
got it. They got it. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Oh, I think this is a good question. I mean, they told us we have 45 minutes, but was that for the whole conversation or just our part?
I don't even know.
So we're gonna do this question and just see where we are, because this is a really important question. From Allie Jones. How do you stay encouraged as a writer, especially as a Black woman in YA?
I think about the kids. I think about the young people, because if you get caught up in publishing and all the politics of it, I mean, just be transparent with y'all. Just like two weeks ago, I had to fire my agent about 3 weeks ago because it came out, he was accused of unethical procedures and sexual harassment. And it was like an article on front page of Publishers Weekly. Angie Thomas fires agent. I was trending on Twitter because I fired my agent. Wow. It was a kind of big deal for a minute there. And if I just let stuff like that get in my way, if I focus on that, I can't write the story. So what encourages me, what gets me going, keeps me going, is thinking about, being at the Mississippi Book Festival and having Black girls and Black boys tell me, I don't read nobody's books but yours, you don't. Or being in Philly and having this young man with sagging pants coming up like, yo, Ma, I hate reading, but I read this shit. Hey, this is dope. So that's what encourages me. Because these kids, they are the future, as we used to say. They really are. And whatever influence I can have on them now can affect the way that they maneuver and operate in the world. And I take that seriously. So, but they encourage me, writing stories for them, writing stories that get them excited about writing, and proving to publishers that Black kids do read.
Right.
That encourages me.
That's it, fam. All right. I just got the little sign that we should be getting up off of here.
All right.
But I just want to say, fam, like, there are not enough words in the world that I can use to thank you for, ironically, being a model. Like, I'm older and I'm supposed to be like the uncle, but I'm watching. I'm the young folks leading, you leading us, fam. And I'm just so grateful for your work on the page, for your work off the page, and for your commitment to Jackson. We can't ever forget where we come from. So thank you, fam. Thank you.
Thank you. Every time, it's funny, you said when you mentioned Jackson, people bring me up. When I mention Jackson, people bring you up. And they're like, you know him? You know him? I'm like, nah, but now I'm like, yep.
Thank you so much, Andy, for real.
Thank you.
All right. Thank y'all all so much. And thanks to everyone who could join us. Y'all take care. There's no easy way to end these. It's always so abrupt, but thank y'all again for your time and your conversation.
And support Square Books, y'all. Support Square Books.
Yeah, that wouldn't hurt either.
One of the best things we got going on in Mississippi. So let's do that. All right. Thank y'all. Peace, y'all.
All right. Good night, y'all.
Good night.